Got him. Hi guys, welcome to ZooView. My name is Peter, I'm your host. I'm one of the educational coordinators here, one of the general zookeepers here. Welcome if this is your first time. If not, welcome back. I hope you guys are enjoying him because I am having a really good time sharing a lot of our animal friends here with you. And today here we have George, which is our big Burmese python. And he got his name George because kind of see what you're doing right now. He's very curious, so hence the name Curious George. He's probably one of the most active snakes I've ever seen in my entire life. Burmese pythons, they're one of the largest snakes in the world actually. They can reach a record length of about 20 to 23 feet. George here is only about 10, and they could top off at about 250 pounds. George here is only about 50, so he has a lot more growing left to do. Now, Burmese pythons, they come from Southeast Asia and the rainforest area. They're a well-known predator there. They'll eat many types of deer and large species of hogs. Now, pythons come from Africa, Asia, and Australia. Like I said, the Burmese is one of the largest, but there's another species that does get much larger, called the reticulated. That can reach a record length of almost 33 feet, and that is one quite large of a snake. Now, pythons have a really cool adaptation though, that many other snakes do not have. If Austin kind of zooms in here on George's face, you might see little holes on his upper lip, kind of little orange pits. Those orange pits right on the upper lip, imagine where a mustache would sit. They're called labial pits, and they detect body heat. So George here can see how big everyone is around him by how much body heat they're giving off. Just like how the army uses infrared goggles to find the enemy, that's what these guys do to find their prey. They use it at night to sense body heat so they can see in almost complete darkness, which is a really good adaptation pythons have and pit vipers have. No other snake has those pits to detect anything. Now, all snakes, though, do something very special with their tongue. If you see George when he sticks out his tongue again, he's doing something very special. He's actually smelling with his tongue right there. So snakes have two holes on top of their head. Those are his nostrils, and that is just to breathe. But they do smell with their tongue. Snakes, they will pick up air particles with their tongue, bring it inside their mouth, and they will rub it up against the roof of their mouth. That's called the Jacobson organ. And that organ helps interpret smell. So, sorry, that's our lemur in the back. So that's what they use, is that Jacobson organ. They pull it in, and that's how they interpret everything around them. So that's how they find stuff during the day. Now, a lot of people don't think snakes have bones, but they do. They have a skull, they have a very long backbone, and a lot of pairs of ribs. And our bigger snakes, like George here, can actually have up to 500 pairs of ribs, which gives them the ability to kind of wrap around and move their bodies in very cool shapes and ways. They also are covered in 4,000 muscles, which do give them the ability to hold on to vertical things. Now, George here, being a python, pythons are constrictors, which means they do not have any fangs or venom. Instead, what he will do once he finds his prey with either his tongue or those pits to detect body heat, he'll latch onto them with their mouth. Inside a snake's mouth, there are very sharp, very curved, almost look like fishing hook, sets of teeth that they hold onto their prey. And then they'll wrap their bodies around that animal really, really tight and squeeze. And when they squeeze, it was once thought that they do that to suffocate their prey. But actually with more research, they actually kill their animal and their prey much faster. They actually stop the blood flow to the brain when they do that, which is a much faster way, and then they'll eat a whole head first. Now, snakes tend to eat very large things. They'll eat things the size of their body. Now, George, even though he's a pretty big snake, he does have a pretty small head. People wonder, well, how do they see snakes eating such large animals like gazelle or deer, things like that? Well, their jaws are shaped in a very special way. Their jaws, on top and bottom, are connected by ligaments and cartilage. And those ligaments and cartilage will spread out extremely wide with those hooked teeth, they're able to hold on to things way bigger than their body. And then they'll inch each piece of their jaw, connected by those ligaments and cartilage, to eat those much larger animals. Now, a reptile being a cold-blooded animal, they don't use the body heat like you and I do, so they don't produce their own body heat, which means they stay warm by their surroundings, where even on a cold day, our internal body tends to stay around that 98 degrees. A snake and reptiles, their body temperature is going to be wherever their surroundings are. So here in the reptile building, and this is probably a comfy 70, 75 degrees. Which means that these animals don't need to eat as often as you and I do. So a large snake like George here can go 3 to 4 weeks without eating. They don't burn those calories like you and I do. That's why these large snakes, these Burmese pythons and reticulated pythons in the wild, can go months without eating. They just break down that food slowly because they don't use as many calories as you and I do to stay warm. Now George here, he loves to teach people about snakes, about the cold-blooded, about pythons. But George here also helps teach people about an invasive species. That's because unfortunately here in America, the Burmese python is an invasive species. So what an invasive species is two things. One, it's a non-native animal, so it doesn't come from America. And two, it causes harm to native animals. So you can have a non-native species living somewhere that is doing just fine. So that's the big difference between non-native and invasive, is that causing harm. So George here in Burmese pythons is an invasive species mainly in Florida. That's because many times people will get a Burmese python as a pet, maybe about a foot to 16 inches long as a baby. And then they grow to 10 feet, what you see here. And unfortunately, when they get too big, they will release them into the wild, especially in Florida and the Everglades. That is because the temperature and humidity of Florida is very much like Southeast Asia, where these guys come from. So what happens there is that these guys eat a lot of those native animals, raccoons, possums, rabbits, deer, things like that. And unfortunately, it's causing a lot of shift in that environment. They're taking away animals like for alligators to eat and other native animals in Florida to eat. So those animals are going starving. The just populations of those animals, the raccoons and possums, they're decreasing because these guys are eating all of them. And also, just be pure size. They just take up a lot of space and they plow over everything. So all those native plants are now being damaged by the snake. So George teaches us about conservation and the importance of never to release an animal into the wild, because you actually don't know what full damage it could do. So there are many organizations, as well as the Game Commission of Florida, to really help these guys to stop them from causing more damage by relocating, donating to zoos and other facilities, and releasing back into their native habitat. Now snakes, everyone is always afraid of snakes. That's because they don't have arms, they don't have legs, they slither, they hiss. Some can be very dangerous, like venomous snakes. And a lot of people think snakes are slimy. If you look here on George real close, you see nothing is coming off of my hands. He's very smooth, there's nothing on him. They just look slimy because of how shiny they are. But if you never felt a snake before, feel your fingertip. That's about what a snake feels like. It's very smooth, very flat, almost that plasticky feel. But snakes, they have a very important role in any environment. Especially snakes that are native to North America. The hognose snake, the black rat snake, corn snakes. They're really important to our own native ecosystem. That's because those snakes here love to eat rodents. And rodents carry a lot of different diseases. Bacterial diseases that can make humans very sick. Those rodents also carry fleas, which can get onto your pets as well as into your house, which they carry tapeworms. And also, those mice and rats also carry ticks. And ticks carry Lyme disease as well as other really bad diseases. For anyone that doesn't know Lyme disease, it's a very, could be potentially fatal disease for humans. So these guys, snakes, like those black rat snakes and corn snakes, are really important because they eat all those animals that can cause much more damage to us humans. Farmers also love snakes. That's because those rodents also eat crops. And a snake, a single black rat snake, can actually save a farmer almost $5,000 in damage a year by eating just rodents every day and throughout its life. So it's really important. You may not want to love snakes as much as I do, but just have a healthy appreciation for them because they do play a really important role in our environment. Not only do they eat things, they are also food for other animals. Everyone loves owls and hawks and those big raptors. A lot of those birds around America do eat snakes. So not only are they helping to keep other populations down, they're also feeding a lot of populations as well. So snakes are a really, really important role in any ecosystem. And as you see here, this is why he gets his name George. He is always, always moving around. You ready to take some questions, buddy? Yeah? All right. We are going to open up to you guys for any questions about snakes, about George, Burmese pythons, invasive species, anything like that. So I believe we have some already flowing in, but put your questions in and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can in our time.
Peter, Ashley would like to know, how long do they live?
Good question. So depending on the species, depends on the age. But a large snake like this can easily do 20 to 30 years.
What is the largest snake? Is it an anaconda?
Depends on what you mean largest. If you want to go heaviest, like pure weight, the green anaconda will be the heaviest. If you want to go largest as longest, then the reticulated python would hit that. That's that 33-foot snake I told you about. But if you want to do heavy, largest as heavy, the anaconda, green anaconda takes that.
Karen is asking, do they lay eggs or give live birth?
Depending on the snake. Burmese pythons, they do lay eggs. Some snakes, though, will give live birth. So pythons tend to lay eggs. Ball pythons, Burmese pythons, those reticulated pythons lay eggs. But a lot of colubrids, like garter snakes, will give live births, as well as boas. Some boas will also give live birth.
Do they make good pets?
If you have the space. As you see, and as I kind of talked about, they get very large and they need a lot of space. Austin kind of showed you right in the beginning how big this enclosure is. Has a lot of height, a lot of width and depth. So Burmese pythons are actually fairly docile snakes, but they get very large. And the issue is people don't have the capacity to take care of a full-grown Burmese python.
Lincoln, age 7, would like to know, how do they shed?
Good question, yeah. So snakes shed when they grow. And it's a lot, Lincoln, like when you get sunburned, you know, your parents get sunburned, your skin kind of starts to peel off. A lot of the same is with the snake. They will do it when they kind of grow too big. So it kind of starts just at the head. It's the easiest. They'll kind of rub it off, just like when you peel off your sunburn. Same deal. Sometimes they'll come off in one nice big long piece. Most of the time they'll come off in fragments or pieces.
Katrina is asking, what do you feed them here at the park?
Yeah, so here at the park, George will get large rats, small rabbits, and also guinea pigs.
Linda wants to know if some snakes can be slimy.
The only slimy snake in the world is called a worm. And that was a joke, everybody. Worms are not snakes. No, there are no slimy snakes. All snakes are smooth. Now, depending on the species, sometimes scales will overlap, so it might be a little rougher, but you'll never get anything coming off of a snake. Even ones that live in the water, you pull them out, once that water goes away, they're going to be dry.
What other types of snakes do you have here at Lake Tobias?
Yeah, we do have a reticulated python, who's about 14 to 15 feet. We have a yellow anaconda, which is a little bit smaller than our green anacondas in the wild. We have a lot of education animals, so if you've been to the reptile building, you might have seen or even touched one of our ball pythons or our Borneo python, which is in our education department. And I know a lot of people always question to ask, especially, I'm holding George right here. Can George eat you? Eat a person? George in this size is not going to eat a person. Even full-grown retics, they don't want to really eat a person because we're just too big. Now, can that happen? Definitely, for sure. And a lot of people wonder, like, is he constricting me? Is my hand going to go blue and purple? Without any arms and legs, he's just holding on right now. Just like how you guys at home can give your loved ones a hug, or you could really squeeze your loved ones, George is just giving me a nice hug here. He's just holding on, especially when our smaller ball pythons, they wrap around our hands and fingers. They're all just holding on. They're not trying to hurt me. He knows I'm way too big to eat. He knows that I'm not trying to eat him. So there's just a healthy relationship between us two where he doesn't have to squeeze tightly or hurt me. Yeah. Oh, let's see, George. Let me see my watch here. All right. It looks like we are getting close to finishing up here. So thank you guys for joining another ZooView. Like I said, I do really enjoy these. As always, connect, protect, and change. Especially these guys. These are a really important animal. Snakes are not a big fan of everybody, but snakes do play a really important role in our ecosystem that I kind of mentioned. And we want to make sure that we teach everyone about invasive species like Burmese pythons, like cane toads, and things like that, to make sure that they don't harm our native wildlife, even though they are really cool animals. And you always have a role in our world today. Thank you guys for joining us. Was there one more?
I just had one.
Okay.
Alora wants to know how old George is.
Good question. Yeah, so George was donated to us. George is a little new to us. He was here last year. Donated because he was actually somebody's pet that got too big. So George is, what, 4 or 5 years old. And like I said, they can live to 20 to almost 30. So he has a lot of life and a lot of growing left to do. But like I was saying, continue to look back on our website as well as social media to any more updates of when and how we will be open, and continue to check back for any more zoo views, all right? So thank you guys for coming out. If George had hands, he'd wave goodbye, but thank you, and have a good day, guys. See you later.